Good afternoon. Welcome to the Mesquite Police Department. My name is Stephen Biggs. I'm a lieutenant and public information officer here at the department. This press conference is being held for our media partners. Any community members or other civilians are welcome to watch, but this is not a community forum, and we will only be taking questions from media members. In the spirit of full transparency, the purpose of this critical incident community debrief is to release relevant information regarding the officer-involved shooting that took place on May 4th, 2021 in our city. The video presentation debrief that you will see in reference to this event will last about 13 minutes. During this presentation, you will hear the 911 hang-up call related to this event, as well as the radio traffic regarding this call. You'll also see body-worn camera footage from one of the officers in both real-time and a slow-motion version, which will provide more detail and more context to this event. You'll also see crime scene photos of weapons, and you will learn about the investigative process from this point forward. We hope that this presentation will help answer questions and clarify this event for our media partners and our community. We ask that everyone view this presentation in its entirety and hold any questions until the end of the presentation. Also, at the end of the press conference, each media member will be provided with a media kit containing the press release, reports, links for the video that you'll see here, and other relevant information. If everybody's ready, we'll go ahead and start the video. Hello, I'm Lieutenant Stephen Biggs, Public Information Officer for the Mesquite Police Department. This critical incident community briefing is intended to provide you with information about an officer-involved shooting that occurred on the morning of May 4th, 2021. You're about to see relevant video footage and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to the case so you can have a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know right now. The Mesquite Police Department conducts very thorough use of force investigations, which typically require investigators to interview multiple witnesses, view numerous hours of video footage, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. We're still at the very early stages of this investigation, and our understanding of the incident may change as this additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We also do not draw any conclusions about whether the officers acted consistent with our policies and the law until all the facts are known and the investigation is complete. A word of caution: the images and information you're about to see may be disturbing. When a police officer uses force to arrest a suspect or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. In addition, there may be strong language used by those shown in the video. Viewer discretion is advised, especially for young children and sensitive viewers. On May 4th, 2021 at 7:44 a.m., the Mesquite Police Department received a 911 call with an open line, specifically meaning that the phone call was connected, but the caller was not responding to the operator's questions. As you will hear in the recording, a female is upset, screaming and crying. A male can also be heard with additional screaming, yelling, and the sounds of a possible physical struggle. The call was disconnected, but the operator called back and did not receive an answer. An address was associated to this phone number by previous police calls at 5860 Northwest Drive, apartment 202 in Mesquite. A new police call was created and coded as a 911 hang-up. Here is the 911 call from this incident.
Mesquite 911, Morales. What's the address of your emergency?
You fell in the bed now.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
Now listen to the dumbass response you gave me. I was going to take it out of you. Listen to the response you gave me.
No.
Listen to the response you gave me. Listen.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
No, don't take me that way.
Hello, 911, what's the address of your emergency?
You trying to do it, right? All I'm saying is take it.
Hello, 911.
Please don't take my son. Why don't you take me? All this shit been paid at me.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
I've been trying to pay my bills and stuff. I'm going to pay him. We need to go. Okay, let me go get it. Let me go get it. Please.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
At approximately 7:50 hours, officers were dispatched to the location. Here is that radio traffic.
261 and 244 start toward a 911 hang-up call. Audubon Park Apartments, 5860 Northwest, Apartment 202. Started out as an open line. The call takers could hear a female screaming and crying and saying, "Please don't hit me." There was a male in the background that was yelling at her. Prior from the last disturbance shows suspect is an Ashton Pink. He's a black male born in 93. He has Region 99 side of Garland and DPD and shows to be a gang member. 222, we've tried calling back a few times. There's no answer. We've left him a message. 214 and 244, the last prior call to location does show Ashton Pink to be a mental patient. He's bipolar, schizophrenic, and has depression.
At approximately 7:59 hours, the first officer arrives on scene and knocks on the door of the apartment. We see at this point the suspect answer the door. That suspect was later identified as 27-year-old Ashton Pink. Officer 1 advised Mr. Pink that she was there to inquire about a disturbance. As you will see in the video, Mr. Pink was calm but not cooperative. The door was quickly closed by Mr. Pink when Officer 1 received confirmation that a female victim was inside the apartment and in distress. The female victim later told investigators that she was behind Mr. Pink when he answered the door, and she was signaling to Officer 1 for help. Officer 1 continued to knock on the front door and called out to Mr. Pink. Eventually, the door opened and the female victim exited with a young child. The female victim stated to Officer 1 that Mr. Pink physically assaulted her and he was in possession of a knife. She advised that Mr. Pink was trying to leave the apartment. Officer 2 arrived at 8:01 hours, about the same time as Mr. Pink climbed out of a second-floor window and then dropped to the ground. Mr. Pink was holding a long club and knife, as previously mentioned by the female victim. Officer 1 and Officer 2 placed themselves between Mr. Pink and the female victim and her child. The officers attempted to verbally engage Mr. Pink, and Officer 2 can be seen taking steps backward to provide space. Officers did display their handguns in response to the weapons Mr. Pink produced. Mr. Pink refused any verbal commands with the officers, and he can be heard yelling repeatedly, "Shoot!" This encounter between Mr. Pink and the officers outside the apartment building only lasted approximately 25 seconds. Mr. Pink made no effort to flee or drop his weapons. Instead, he ran directly toward the officers with the club and knife raised in his hands. The officers made the decision to fire their duty weapons, striking Mr. Pink, who fell to the ground. The club fell from his hands first, and the knife fell out of his hands while he was on the ground. Body-worn video cameras are issued by the Mesquite Police Department. They are worn at chest or belt level and capture a general perspective within line of sight from that angle. The angle of the camera prohibits viewers from seeing everything the officers saw and experienced. Upon activation, both audio and video are recorded. Here's the body-worn camera video from Officer 1.
Hello.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
We got a call of a disturbance.
No disturbance here.
Okay. Can I talk to you, ma'am?
There's no disturbance here.
Yeah, there is a disturbance here. You can open the door. We're going to come in.
He's running.
Okay. Which way did he go?
He ran up the back.
244. Subject just went upstairs, climbed on the balcony.
He just hit me.
Okay. Hang on just a second. What's he got in his hand? Does he have a weapon? I'm sorry?
A knife.
Okay, go ahead and come over here, ma'am. Ma'am, don't go back in your apartment. Okay. Come on down here and talk to me.
10-4-58-60, apartment 202.
244, he's supposed to be armed with a knife. He went up on that balcony. He's supposed to have a knife.
Nigga, shoot! 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 Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I don't know.
Don't do it.
She said he had a knife. Put your hands up. 244 shots fired. Stay on the ground. Stay on the ground.
Now that we have seen the raw version of the body-worn camera video, let us look at it again as we discuss and highlight some key details from this event.
He's running.
Okay. Which way did he go?
He ran off the back.
244. Subject just went upstairs, climbed on the balcony.
He just hit me.
Okay. Hang on just a second. What's he got in his hand? Does he have a weapon? I'm sorry?
A knife.
Okay, go ahead and come over here, ma'am. Ma'am, don't go back in your apartment. Okay. Come on down here and talk to me.
10-4-58-60, apartment 202.
244, he's supposed to be armed with a knife. He went up on that balcony. He's supposed to have a knife.
Nigga, shoot! 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 Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I don't know.
Don't do it.
She said he had a knife.
We see Mr. Pink come around the corner and charge at officers with his arm raised in an aggressive manner. In his hand is both the knife and the club. As Mr. Pink is struck, we see the club fall to the ground. We can also briefly see the knife in his right hand. Mr. Pink falls to the ground and is continually given verbal commands by the officers. As Mr. Pink rolls over, we see the knife fall from his right hand onto the ground. Mesquite police officers attempted CPR and other life-saving measures. A Mesquite Fire Department ambulance was dispatched at 8:03 hours. The ambulance arrived at 8:07 hours and left the scene with Mr. Pink for Baylor Hospital in Dallas at 8:16 hours, where he was later pronounced deceased. This tragic incident, from the time that Mr. Pink was contacted at the front door until the time the two Mesquite police officers had to use deadly force to stop Mr. Pink's assault with two deadly weapons, took approximately 2 minutes and 1 second. The female victim had visible injuries and was evaluated by paramedics with the Mesquite Fire Department. She declined to be transported to a hospital for further treatment. The female victim told investigators that she called 911 because Mr. Pink physically assaulted her because he was upset about a financial situation. Physical evidence supported the victim's allegations of assault. Mr. Pink reportedly punched her in the face multiple times, applied pressure to her neck, restricting her breathing, and threatened her with a knife. The victim later told investigators that when Mr. Pink closed the door on Officer 1, he made the statement, "They are going to have to kill me." The multiple assaulted criminal offenses Mr. Pink committed against the female range up to a second-degree felony. Investigators recovered the club and knife belonging to Mr. Pink at the scene. Investigators learned the club had been modified to have sockets and batteries taped to both ends. Officer 1 is a 25-year veteran of the Mesquite Police Department. Officer 1 was carrying a Glock 22 .40 caliber pistol and fired 3 rounds. Officer 2 is a 21-year veteran of the Mesquite Police Department. Officer 2 was also carrying a Glock 22 .40 caliber pistol and fired 2 rounds. The Mesquite Police Department will continue to investigate and analyze this incident. We will continue interviewing witnesses that may come forward and complete any forensic test. After the investigation is complete, the investigation will be referred to the Dallas County District Attorney's Office for review. The Internal Affairs Unit will also conduct an investigation and evaluate the evidence to determine whether the officer's actions and use of deadly force in this instance follow departmental policy and procedures. Thank you for taking the time to view this critical incident community briefing. All right, guys. At this point, we'll take a few questions. Before we start, let me explain the process. Again, we're only taking questions from credential media members. And Sergeant Bradford has the microphone, so if you will raise your hand, he will bring you the mic, and then we'll go from there. If you would state your name and what outlet you're with, please.
I'm Katie with Fox 4, and I know there were multiple calls since November for disturbance calls regarding Mr. Pink. Had either of those officers previously responded to a disturbance call, the same officers that are under investigation?
So, no, ma'am. Neither one of those officers had ever been to the location to deal with Mr. Pink. Or I should say, had dealt with Mr. Pink.
Did
Okay. All right. Go ahead, and then we'll go to
Sorry, I'm Maria Brewer with NBC5. Did either of the officers have a taser on them? And what's the policy? I don't know if it's changed during the past couple of years.
So, yes, the first question is yes. They both had tasers on their duty belts. Our current policy does not require an officer to carry a taser. As with any, and going from there, it was with any officer-involved shooting or any use of force investigation. There's, something like this. There's a criminal investigation. There's an administrative side of the investigation. And there's also where we look at a review of any potential policy or training issues that we can learn from this. So the overall answer to your question is no, they're not required to carry them according to our policy. From my understanding, the information they got was from what y'all heard on the radio traffic. So, and I'll go ahead and address that by saying that, the officers got that initial information. However, they're going to a disturbance call. They're going to a 911 hang-up call. This was not a mental health call, although they did have that information. Dispatch did advise the officers in the notes of Mr. Pink having bipolar or potentially mental issues. Officers still have to deal with the call as a response to a 911 hang-up or a potential disturbance. Nothing changes in that regard. And in this situation, you saw that in the video, this escalated in a matter of roughly 2 minutes from the time the officer got there to the time the deadly force event took place. So the time and the ability to reason or diagnose Mr. Pink was severely limited because of his actions that escalated things.
The federal regulators at the FAA, why did y'all only release one body camera footage versus the second body camera footage? And how did you know that you had schizophrenia? Had y'all gone to that home before and had any kind of mental health issues in the past?
Okay. So the first question, in full transparency, the Officer 2 on the video, so we saw Officer 1's body cam. Officer 2's body cam was not functioning. So right now that is part of our investigation. We don't know if that was a malfunction. We don't know if there's an issue with the camera itself or if it was simply he forgot to turn it on. So that is part of the investigation. Fortunately, Officer 1 body cam was working and it captured everything, and Officer 2 never left the screen in her camera.
And my follow-up question was, how did you know that he had a history of mental illness?
So that information was in the call notes. I'll be completely honest, I don't know how that information got fed into the call notes, but obviously it was in the call notes for the dispatchers to put out.
So we kind of like you were saying that they don't respond to any discipline, and you give them information that he has a mental health illness, and then one of the accusations from the family is saying is some of the officers
So first and foremost, the officers were sent to a 911 hang-up call. They weren't sent to a 1096 or what we call a mentally disturbed person. They were sent to a 911 hang-up call involving a disturbance. So first and foremost, they're going to handle that situation and get that under control before they deal with anything from the mental aspect. In regards to mental health training, yes, both officers had attended or had received CIT or crisis intervention training. In addition, both officers had additional training in the form of de-escalation and or hostage negotiator training. Okay.
Hi, Meredith Young with NBC5. I just wondered what was it like today showing that video to the family?
I would have to defer to another colleague because I did not show that video.
This is media from Telemundo. I'm sure you guys have seen this over and over before you put this together. Have you guys asked yourself or talked about what could have been done differently after watching it over and over?
I think with any with any officer-involved shooting or any tragic event, yeah, I think you're always going to look at things and it's very easy in the with foresight and so forth, and the ability to sit back and have time on your side to look at things. Obviously, we can't judge these officers in the span of 2 minutes and ultimately in the span of 25 seconds what they had to do. But in regards to your question, yeah, absolutely. I think any good organization, whether it's a police department or a business, you look at each and every situation you're put in and you evaluate and see what you could do better. I talked about earlier about, there's a criminal side, an administrative side, and a, looking at policy and training. And then that's something we'll look at going forward. So right now I can't tell you definitively anything, but yes, that is something we'll definitely evaluate.
Lieutenant, a lot of people are probably going to get this video, and then they're going to compare it to other videos around the country where other suspects also charge that officer with something that could be a deadly weapon, yet those people are not shot. And these videos, these comparisons are going to be made, saying, why was this man shot? Why wasn't it de-escalated, especially since you said both officers have received this training? What do you say to people who are going to be doing this?
So in regards to that, and I'll go ahead and address, somebody brought up the taser issue. The taser is a useful tool for law enforcement in a lot of situations. In this incident, it was not. The taser is a less lethal device. The suspect was wielding 2 deadly weapons, and we're not countering 2 deadly weapons with a less lethal device. Given the short duration of time that occurred, we talked about 2 minutes and 1 second, and ultimately about 25 seconds for the actual engagement there. The taser is just not a suitable option in that situation. Again, kind of to pair both of y'all together, with time on our side, the benefit of forethought, we can look at every possible scenario of what could have been done with, additional manpower or shields or all these other things. But at the end of the day, we had a female victim, a child directly behind those officers. You probably saw from the other video that's been released. So their Officer 2 did take a couple steps back to attempt to gain some distance, but you're still talking at a distance of about 10 feet without having to continue to push the mother and the child back. So hope that answers that. All right. I want to thank everybody for coming. If you will, before you leave, Sergeant Bradford and Officer Lopez has media packs they would love to give you. So thank you, guys.